Numbers chapter 11. You know, what's funny is as we get closer to Thanksgiving, people start, it drives me crazy that we're already seeing decorations for Christmas. Does that drive anyone else crazy? I remember all you Thanksgiving Thanksgiving-centric people, you're like, what in the world happened to Thanksgiving? Because, I remember going, I can't even remember where I was, if it was Costco or Walmart or somewhere like that. I mean, they had you know where it was? It was that women-y crafty store. Where were we? We were at Hobby Lobby. Like a women's crafting fantasy land. We walk in there and you go, I mean, men are just like, they're going into convulsions walking into Hobby Lobby, like, where have I ended up? You know, where's Bass Pro Shop? And so I'm walking through there with my wife holding my hand so I didn't get lost. And I remember it was August or September, and they had a whole rack of Christmas things already. And I'm going, what in the world is going on here? I mean, we're like literally 4 months away from a holiday, and they're already putting out stuff for you to buy for Christmas. And it just shows you, one, the power that consumerism has in the United States, that we already are getting ready to spend money without even being thankful before we get there for what we already have. So we have already focused, we've already stepped over Thanksgiving into the most materialistic holiday of the whole year. It's not wrong to get presents, it's not wrong to give presents, but it's funny that our culture is already, I mean, it's going to be after July 4th, like after the fireworks are off, they're like, let's go buy Christmas presents, because it's all over the place. I mean, it's pretty much going to be a year-round thing pretty soon if they keep on pushing it like that. It's amazing. It's amazing to me. For one holiday, they start pushing it 4 months out. But what we're going to do is we're going to take a look this morning at a story that you may or may not have ever heard out of the Old Testament about how God expects his people to be thankful and what happens when they are not thankful. So let's look in Numbers chapter 11. This is the children of Israel. They've been saved out of Egypt as slaves. They were slaves for almost 400 years. God finally says, I'm going to rescue my people. He sends Moses. Moses goes. The 10 plagues end up on Egypt so that the Pharaoh lets the people of Egypt go. Moses leads out about 1 million people. Basically, he takes the whole workforce of Egypt out. Basically, the same kind of workforce that built the pyramids in Egypt. He takes the guts of the economy right out from underneath the Egyptians. He takes their whole slave labor of 1 million people, just guts it right out from underneath them. Which is why God had to use plagues to get him out of there, because there's no way that the Pharaoh was going to let his economy go. God finally gets them all out from slavery. And now we see what happens in Numbers chapter 11. Numbers chapter 11, verse 1. And the people complained in the hearing of the Lord about their misfortunes. And when the Lord heard it, his anger was kindled, and the fire of the Lord burned among them and consumed some outlying parts of the camp. So now they have traveled. They're traveling together. Imagine these 1 million people walking across a desert. God has stopped the sun with clouds by day so they don't burn up. And at night, there's a pillar of fire that kind of keeps all the 1 million people warm so they don't freeze in the desert. The climate of Egypt and Israel is very similar to Southern California, except without the water, without the irrigation. So imagine walking around in the winter like right now with no warmth. In the summertime when it's 95, 100, 110 degrees with no shade. Very similar topography. So the people now have been wandering around with Moses in the desert, and they're starting to go, you know what? What in the world is going on? We keep walking around in this desert. Yeah, God's providing for us, but man, this is really a drag. Verse 2, then the people cried out to Moses, and Moses prayed to the Lord, and the fire died down. So the name of that place was called Taberah, because the fire of the Lord burned among them. Verse 4, now the rabble that was among them had a strong craving. So you might want to circle rabble or whatever you have in your Bible, because you could basically put teenager maybe in there. The teenagers in your house had a strong craving. They had a strong desire for something, and they complained because they didn't get the new iPhone or the Steve Jobs special edition model or whatever. This is the feeling you're starting to get. People are wandering around. You know what it's like when you've been around people for a while and they're starting to get a little bit like, I'm not having a great time, honestly. This isn't exactly what I signed up for. This isn't the Disneyland I was promised. And then people among them start to go, you know what? This is actually really lame. In fact, I kind of want to be back in Egypt. Don't you? And you kind of get that, there's that undercurrent of like discontent that all of a sudden people are like, you know what? I think you're right. I think you're right. This isn't what I signed up for. And they forget about what happened and what God did. So there's people starting to sow seeds of discontent. Verse 4, now the rabble that was among them had a strong craving, and the people of Israel also wept again and said, oh, that we had meat to eat. So God has been providing bread for them in the desert and water miraculously every day for them to eat. And now they're saying, oh, if we could just go to Ruth Chris. Remember that fat slab of steak we ate that one time? Oh, man. Oh, we're here in the desert. That's right. I forgot. Verse 5, we remember the fish that we ate in Egypt that cost us nothing. They got it right out of the Nile. The cucumbers, the melons, the leeks, the onions, and the garlic. Oh, your mouth is starting to water right now. You're like, oh. They're right. That's so good. But now our strength is dried up, and it's the Hebrew idea of like we're starting to shrivel like a raisin. Our strength is drying up in this desert. But now our strength is dried up. There's nothing at all but this manna to look at. So now they're mocking what God's provision has been. His miraculous provision, now they're mocking it. All we got is this miraculous manna that he gives us every day to stay alive. What about those onions and that steak and those fish we pulled out of the Nile for nothing? Now the manna was like coriander seed, and its appearance like that of bdellium. The people went about and gathered it and ground it in hand mills or beat it in mortars and boiled it in pots and made cakes of it. And the taste of it was like the taste of cakes baked with oil, which is pretty awesome. When the dew fell upon the camp at night, the manna fell with it. Moses heard the people weeping throughout their clans, everyone at the door of his tent, and the anger of the Lord blazed hotly, and Moses was displeased. Moses said to your servant, why have you dealt ill with me? And why have I not found favor in your sight that you lay the burden of all this people on me? Did I conceive this people? Did I give birth to this nation that you should say to me, carry them in your bosom or at your stomach or at your chest as a nurse carries a nursing child to the land that you swore to give their fathers? Where am I to get meat to give all these people? For they weep before me and say, give us meat that we may eat. I am not able to carry all these people alone. The burden is too heavy for me. If you will treat me like this, kill me at once. Moses says, if I have to continue leading these people, just kill me. How's that for a pastoral prayer? If you'll treat me like this, kill me at once. If I have found favor in your sight. So in other words, God, if you love me, just kill me now. You ever said those words? If you love me at all, God, just put me to death right now. The meekest man that's ever lived, Moses, who shows up in the Transfiguration, has a moment where he's so depressed. He's like, I can't go on. I can't lead these people anymore. These people are unleadable. Just thankless, nagging, backbiting, just horrendous people. Just please kill me. Imagine saying that as Moses. Verse 16, then the Lord said to Moses, so God's going to help him fix this problem, this leadership problem. Then the Lord said to Moses, gather for me 70 men of the elders of Israel whom you know to be the elders of the people and officers over them, and bring them to the tent of meeting, and let them take their stand with you. And I will come down and talk with you there, and I will take some of the spirit that is on you and put it on them, and they shall bear the burden of the people with you, so that you may not bear it alone. And say to the people, consecrate yourselves for tomorrow, and you shall eat meat. For you have wept in the hearing of the Lord, saying, who will give us meat to eat? For it was better for us in Egypt. Therefore, the Lord will give you meat, and you shall eat. You shall not eat just 1 day, or 2 days, or 5 days, or 10 days, or 20 days, but a whole month until it comes out your nostrils and becomes loathsome to you. Because you have rejected the Lord who is among you and have wept before him, saying, why did we come out of Egypt? But Moses said, the people among whom I number are 600,000 on foot, so that's the foot soldiers. And you have said, I will give them meat, that they may eat a whole month? Shall flocks and herds be slaughtered for them, and there be enough? Or shall all the fish of the sea be gathered together for them, and there be enough? And the Lord said to Moses, is my hand too short? Now you shall see whether my word will come true for you or not. So Moses went out and told the people the words of the Lord, and he gathered 70 men of the elders of the people and placed them around the tent. Then the Lord came down in a cloud and spoke to him, and took some of the spirit that was on him and put it on the 70 elders. And as soon as the spirit rested on them, they prophesied, but they did not continue to do it. Skip down to verse 31. It describes 2 men that became elders with Moses. Verse 31. Then a wind from the Lord sprang up, and it brought quail from the sea, and let them fall beside the camp about a day's journey on this side and a day's journey on the other side around the camp, and about 2 cubits above the ground. And the people rose all the day and all the night and all the next day and gathered the quail. Those who gathered the least gathered 10 homers. And they spread them out for themselves all around the camp. While the meat was yet between their teeth, before they had even swallowed it, the anger of the Lord was kindled among the people, and the Lord struck down the people with a very great plague. Therefore the name of that place was called Kibroth Hattaavah, because there they buried the people who had the craving. Number 1, God is the ultimate giver to his people. God is the ultimate giver to his people. It was only less than 2 years earlier when the people of Israel were slaves in Egypt. They had cried out to God to rescue them from the persecution of the Egyptians. In mercy, God sends Moses to save them through 10 miraculous plagues, and then parts the Red Sea, setting all of them free. And you see that in Exodus 14. On the way to Mount Sinai, they complained about having no bread. So in the middle of the desert, God rained down bread from heaven every morning, and that's the manna that he talked about. Now, after a year and a half of similar meals, some of the non-Israelites that had left Egypt with them started to criticize God's provision. They exalted the memory of the variety of foods in Egypt, especially the meat and the fish. Being in the desert, fish were non-existent, and the migration of birds and large herds in the area would be inconsistent. The complaint for meat spread like wildfire through Israel until there was a national unrest. Negativity is like a poison. Any of you negaholics out there? You live off being negative? You wake up in the morning, you're like, this day's going to stink. It hasn't even started yet. You go out and get in your car and you go, bet my car's not going to start, piece of junk. You start driving to your work and you're like, bet the freeway's going to be packed. You get off the freeway and you're like, wish I had a different job. You get into your job and you go, I bet that Sally's going to try to talk to me again, the one with that really nasty hair. And you sit down and you go, I wonder what my wife packed me, probably that same sandwich she always makes. And then as you're eating the sandwich, you go, you know what? Tomorrow I'm going out for lunch. So I'm so tired of this sandwich. Are you one of those people? Are you one of those? That's like, no matter what could be going good in your life, you'll find the negative in it. You could be having the best day of your life, but you'd be like, you know what? It could be better. No matter what God has blessed you with, you will always find the thing to complain about. Now, that's true of all of us to some degree because we're human. But I wonder how often we look at the splinter in our finger and complain about that when we have total health in all the rest of 99.999% of our body. And we say, God, I hate you for this splinter. But you're saying, I hate you, God, with the health that he's given you. And I think for many of us, we gorge ourselves so much to the degree that we're so blessed by God in many respects that we actually have to find something to complain about. Because we have to use the energy that God has given us, that we don't have to work for the blessing. We have to use that energy somewhere, and so we use it towards negativity. Negativity is like a poison. I'm just telling you. In a church, it's poison. If you're a negative person, please leave. Go somewhere else and be negative. Okay? Bless another church with your ability to be negative. Okay? Just bless them. You want to go there? God bless America and you. Take your negativity and just bless someone else. Take your poison and just poison someone else's field. And I'll just pray for that church. Because I'm telling you what. Listen, it's not always going to be the way you want it. It's not always going to be the way I want it. But together, let's make sure it's the way God wants it. Right? Because that's always going to go against at some point in your life, God's will is always going to go against you. At some point. At some point, it's going to go right against your grain, and you're going to get really angry, and you're going to be like all frazzled. And it's in that day when you figure out how mature you are. It's in that day. Not in the day when everything's going great. Not in the day when you got a 6-figure income. And you're like, I'm living in the house I want to. Oh, I got my second boat. I better make sure that gets waxed before we go to the river. Not in that day. It's in the day when things aren't going well, when you have to sell your boats, when you have to move into the 2-bedroom apartment with your 14 daughters. And you're like, Jesus, have mercy on me. Okay? It's in that day when you go, just like Lot or just like Job, you say, though God takes everything from me, still blessed be the name of the Lord. Right? Because that shows where your heart's at. If your heart's just in it for like, what's in it for me? And if your heart's not continually being like, petted by the Lord or whatever, everything's going to be fine. I'm going to keep giving you stuff. When God goes, hey, it's time for you to grow up. You're not going to always get it your way. You're not going to. Nobody does. It's in that day you figure out where your heart's at. Negativity is like a poison, people. I'm telling you, you got to get rid of it in your life. You got to, in your heart, you got to vomit it up. Because many of us have lived for years just in the negative. Always like, well, why didn't I get that? We talked about always wanting what other people have. And it said never being happy with what you have, never blessing the Lord with what you have, always wanting the next thing, or the next person, or the next whatever. You got to come to a point in your life where you are thankful no matter what. No matter what. Even when the Lord gives you cancer. No matter what. You say, God, I thank you for the life you've given me. Though you end my life right now, I thank you for the years I've had. You know what I'm saying? Because nobody lives forever, and nobody gets it the way they want every day of their life. At some point, God puts a stumbling block in your path. At some point, God may say, your days are numbered. And you want to be able to say in that day, I hate you. You don't want to be able to say, I hate you, God. You want to be able to say, I bless you, Lord, for what you've done for me. Because the Lord may yet do something great in your life, but negativity will blind you to that. Negativity is like a poison. It starts small, but unless abruptly stopped, spreads through the whole system, sickening every part. So if you drink some poison, it'll go just to your stomach for a moment, but then it starts to go like this. It's the reason that we have to be so aggressive about cancer, right? If you have cancer, if you get a spot of cancer on your skin, you don't just go, you know what? I'm going on vacation for a month. I'll take care of that when I get back. And the cancer starts to grow. It starts to eat your skin, and it starts to get into your muscle and into your bone. You're like, it's no big deal. I got one good arm. And it starts to grow. It starts to get into your blood system. It starts to get into your marrow. And pretty soon your body can't process the cancer anymore, and so it starts to shut down, and your body starts to break down, and you kind of go, oh, you know what? But I can still get around in a wheelchair. And then after a while, your body starts to die. And you're like, oh, it's going to be okay. It's not going to be okay. You know, the reason we treat cancer so instantaneously, the reason we give a chemotherapy, the reason we cut it out is because we know if it sits there, it's going to sicken the whole thing. We know if it sits there long enough, it's going to kill the body. That's the reason we know there's cancer. Boom, we cut it out. We chemotherapy it. We kill from the inside. We kill from the outside. We cut it out. We do whatever it takes, right? If you hear you have cancer, you don't just go, that's no big deal. And it's the same thing with negativity. When you sense in your life that, you know what, why don't I have that? Or why am I not this person? Or why am I not that? You have to instantly kill that in your life. And you know the way you kill negativity? You kill negativity with thankfulness. You kill negativity with thankfulness. I learned a lesson a long time ago that things aren't going to be my way, but I know if they're God's way, I'm okay with that. If God steps over me and does something else with somebody else, I thank the Lord for what they've done, for what he's going to do with that other person. I say, thank you, Jesus, for that. You want to know why? Because it keeps me from getting prideful and conceited. And going, why isn't it my way? And the people of Israel here, they're like, dude, we've been eating this they're getting miraculous food from heaven. I don't really like this miraculous food much anymore. What? What are you talking about? God is feeding 1 million people every day in the dead desert. And they're like, you know what? I kind of wish we were slaves. Because then we could eat food like fish and meat. And you know what I love that God does? Just like your teenager or whatever, when you go, they keep bothering you for something like, I just want to go to Dairy Queen. 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 I know you want to go to Dairy Queen. I just want to go to Dairy Queen and get ice cream. I just want 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 ice cream. Why can't we have ice cream? There was ice cream that day a long time ago. It was so tasty. Remember, I went to a birthday party and there was ice cream. And it was so great. It was from Dairy Queen. And after a while, you're just like, okay. Johnny, get in the car. And you drive to Dairy Queen. Or you drive to go get ice cream. You'll get out of the car. We're going into Dairy Queen right now. You want Dairy Queen? You want Dairy Queen? Your dad's going to bless you with Dairy Queen right now. And you get in there, and you ask to go behind the counter, and you take Johnny, and you go behind the counter, and you put his face underneath one of, the Dairy Queen thing, and it just keeps on going, it's filling up his mouth. Oh, you want Dairy Queen? You want Dairy Queen? I got some Dairy Queen it's still coming. Here comes your Dairy Queen. And God goes, oh, you're going to complain? You're going to complain about what I've done for you? I pulled you out of slavery. You were complaining for hundreds of years. Your ancestors were complaining to me that there were slaves in Egypt. I pulled you out by my own hand, and I'm feeding you like no other nation. If there was any other nation in the world that was in the middle of the Sinai desert, they'd be dead. But because I love you, and I love your forefathers, and the promise I made to Abraham, the very first Israelite, the very first Jew, I'm going to save this people. If you're going to complain to me about it, guess what? You're getting some food, all right. And it says he sent them so much food, they couldn't even eat it. Birds are dropping on the ground like 6 feet high. And they're gathering it, and they're trying to hoard it. And it says before they even could swallow it, God started striking them dead for their gluttony. Negativity is like a poison. It starts small, but unless abruptly stopped, spreads through the whole system, sickening every part. And this is how it starts. Ready? A negative spirit brings about negative opinions, which brings about negative speech. You want to know if you're a negative person? Watch how you speak. Are you a complainer? Are you a complaining texter? That was so dumb. I really hate this place. I don't like the food here, blah, 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 blah. Are you if you were to look at your texting history, are like half of them negative? I hate that dress she wears. It's so last season. And that Coach handbag, oh my gosh, she probably got it off eBay. I bought mine at the store. Are you a complainer for the blessing that other people that other people have been blessed by God with? Are you covetous? Other people got good stuff, so why don't I have that when God's already blessed you immensely? More than what we even deserve? Negativity. At least somebody's listening this morning. We got one. Amidst the hundreds, there's one. Okay, at least I know I'm connecting. with a 3-year-old. Okay, perfect. A negative spirit leads to negative opinions, which will lead to your negative speech, okay? That will mean when you start speaking negatively, you are now a negative influence. At work, at home, at school, on a team, you become a negative influence. I don't like to coach. It becomes poison in the water. Negative speech leads to negative influence, which becomes a toxic environment, which will lead ultimately to a destructive force. In other words, things will start falling apart. If you can't have unity and community at any level, whether it's a youth softball team or a church or Apple computers, once negativity starts to wind around in there, everything starts fracturing because groups start forming, and it just becomes this fractured mess. It can even happen in your home. And that's why we talked about during Family Matters that husbands and wives, you got to be on the same team. You're not in competition with one another. You're a complement to one another. It leads to destructive forces and then ultimately the ineffectiveness of death of a principal, partnership, or person. The problem wasn't necessarily the desire for a change of food, but rather the disposition of unthankfulness. It wasn't necessarily they wanted meat. God could provide meat. It was the disposition that I am not happy. And because I'm not happy, I'm going to let you know I'm not happy, and I'm going to create an environment of negativity. It wasn't that the problem wasn't that they wanted something else. I like to go get a steak as much as you do. But if you go have a steak and you don't invite me to go to Ruth Chris, I'm not going to disparage you the good steak. I'm not going to be like, you know what, I'm standing out in front of Ruth Chris looking through the window at you. I hope you hate that steak. I hope it's horrible. You know that steak you're eating? I know it looks good, but I hope it's horrible. I hope it just tastes like garbage. You know what? I'm going to praise God that you go get to have a tasty steak, and I don't. It wasn't necessarily their desire for something. It was the disposition of their heart that said, we deserve something. I'd rather be in slavery eating meat than be here in God's will, eating miraculous bread. They missed the food of the good old days of slavery, thereby rejecting what God had done and was going to do. Personal opinion should not be treated as divine directive. Believers must be careful to correctly observe and present personal viewpoints that won't be destructive to God's work or dishonoring to His will. Complaint without biblical warrant shows prideful arrogance. Complaining uses energy for change through pride, gossip, and personal agenda. You ever been around those people? They're going to change the world by gossiping about somebody else. They're going to try to change the company or get somebody fired by using gossip on the backside to get everybody on their team so that they go against the supervisor or whatever. It happens in companies, happens in churches. Everything blows apart because you try to manipulate from the backside. Because we all only have a certain amount of energy. You only are, just like physical energy, you get tired, you only have a certain amount of emotional energy. And you can either use that for negativity or you can use that to build up people. And here's the thing, watch. It doesn't surprise me because before I was saved, I would have understood that. I would have understood you got to get your way any way you can. If it's stepping on people, if it's backstabbing them, if it's cutting them down behind their back, you got to do whatever you need to do to move ahead. It's like, so what? If I get the raise or if I get whatever, hey, good for me. Sorry it didn't work out for you. But when you become a Christian, when your heart changes, when you actually start following Jesus, you got to have faith that no matter what happens, even if they get the spot over you, even if they get the raise, that God's still going to take care of you. God's still going to take care of you. God doesn't abandon you. God is a lover of you. He loves your life. He loves your soul. He paid for it with His own blood on the cross. But as a follower of Jesus now, you got to be thankful for what God is doing, not what you wish God would do. Because it's a different way of thinking. Because what you're saying to God when you complain is that things are not as good as they should be, which makes God not God. Because what you're saying is, I could be God better than you can be God. Because if I was God, I'd be doing these things. I'd be giving us meat. I'd be giving us fish. Because I know better than you. It's a massive level of pride. Rather than saying, God, I know you're going to give us the promised land someday, so for right now I'm going to eat bread. And someday we'll eat meat. Someday we'll eat fish. But it's just not going to be right now. But I thank you for what I do have right now. I thank you for the present, knowing that you're going to bless me in the future if I follow you. Just like a good father would, right? Good father doesn't give his kids everything, but he knows if his kids are good, if he has the ability to bless them in the future, he will. Complaining uses energy for change through pride, gossip, and personal agenda. Thanksgiving uses energy for change through faith, respect, and appreciation. And we see that in Philippians 2:14. God may delay the journey to test the heart's attitude. Are you not where you want to be right now? In your job? Are you not where you want to be right now in your marriage? You know what's funny? Is that sometimes, just like the Israelites, God delayed their journey. Did you know, watch this, ready? To go from Egypt to Canaan, if you were to look at a map, and for those of you that know the story of the Exodus, to go from Egypt to Canaan, even with 1 million people walking at about 3.5 to 5 miles an hour, which is about the speed some cattle can walk, about like this. Moving at that pace, you can make it between the two places in about 2 weeks. You know it took them 40 years to get to Canaan? 40 years, friends. You think your car's slow on the freeway. Wow. A journey that should have taken about 14 days took 40 years. You want to know why God did that? Because of the heart of the people. He didn't want the wicked heart of that generation, this complaining generation, to enter the promised land. Because the poison that was outside the promised land needed to die before he could bless the people inside the promised land. And you know what he did? He took a whole generation around and let them die. Their bodies dropped in the desert. Their bones are still out there somewhere buried in the sand. But you know what he did? He took the children of that generation into Canaan. And to this day, the Jews are still there. And let me tell you this. You and I have to purge that whole self-aggrandizement thing that goes on in our hearts, where it's just like, I deserve stuff. What we want to say is we want to humbly say, God, I don't deserve anything. But I know that you are the great blesser of your children. And because you love us, I know if I walk in obedience with you, that I might not get what I want now, but I know that you will bless me in the future. Don't start developing a heart that goes, I need this right now. Develop a heart that says, whatever you're willing to give it to me, God, I'll wait. Because that generation could have gone into the promised land. But because of their hard heart, God said, no way. No way am I letting this poison into my promised land. Number 2, God's people should have the ultimate gratitude for God. God's people should have the ultimate gratitude for God. As the leader of 1 million complainers, you think you got problems? You think there's a bunch of complainers at work? Or like your wife complains a lot, or your husband complains all the time, or your teenagers are like, this is the worst time ever. I'm not going to ever wear that skirt. I can't believe you bought that for me. You're like, I spent $28 at Ross on this skirt. You're going to wear it to school. Or that jacket, or whatever. Like you wouldn't believe what your dad has to do to make this money. And you're going to complain when I buy you something? Imagine having a whole nation of complainers. Everybody complaining. Moses is so fried in his mind. Imagine you being the leader of 1 million complainers. Everybody writes you notes. You know when you get those like secret notes, you're like, here, I got a little note for you. And you're like, oh, great, what's this about? And you open it up, and you're like, you're the worst leader the world has ever known. And I can't believe that I'm here, and your shoes are ugly, and, whatever. And you just get it, you're just like, oh, great. That's one person, and you want to just like vaporize yourself. Imagine like 1 million people are like, okay, here, 48,000 messages are like, Moses, you're no good. Why'd you bring us from Egypt? I can't believe we're eating the same bread. What's going on with this? Blah, 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 blah. And you're just like, you know what am I going to do? Where am I going to take 1 million people? 1 million complainers. It's so bad, Moses says, please kill me. Please kill me. You know what I love about Moses is that it's so real. He's not some super spiritual like, you know what, I've thought about this and I shall lead these people through my superhuman strength into the promised land because I'm amazing. He goes, you know what, God, just smoke me right here. Just hide me in the dirt. Let these people all wander around and complain by themselves. Like, I can't, what are we doing? Moses is like, I'm done. Time out, I'm done. I'm totally done with you and this whole nation. And you know what? God doesn't kill him. Isn't that awesome? God doesn't answer his prayer. Moses prays, please kill me. And God goes, nope. You get to be here with these beautiful people. I love that. Because many times we think the best thing for me to do is escape. I need to leave the church. Or I need to leave this company. Or I need to leave my family. Or I need to leave. Because many of us are just escape people. The minute something tough comes, like, I'm out. Oh, you didn't buy me the red sweatshirt? I'm gone. Oh, that's the wrong dog food. I'm out of here. The dogs will never eat that. I'm gone. Many of us, the minute something comes up that we don't like or that's a little bit like makes us uncomfortable or it's not the way it used to be or the good old days or whatever, we just go, I'm out. I just can't process all this. This is just crazy. And you know what God does? Moses, one of the meekest men that's ever lived, actually showed up to talk to Jesus on the Mount of Transfiguration. That's how amazing Moses was. That guy goes, God, if you've ever loved me in the history of my life, just kill me now. Just send lightning, send an angel to shut my mouth, to choke me out, MMA, do something. I won't tap. I'm going out. If you kill me, I'm good. And you know what? God goes, nope. You're going to stay alive. I'm going to keep you alive, and you're going to be nice and healthy to deal with these millions of complainers. Why would God do that? You want to know why? Because it's all about the journey of your sanctification in your walk with God, not the end result. Because God already knows the end result, but it's up to you and I to discover how we're supposed to change in our response to walking with God. Your sanctification, your becoming more like Jesus is a process. And God uses the pressure of complaining and other issues in your life to make you, to mold you to be like Christ. That's why he doesn't take you out of every difficult situation. He leaves you there. Because he wants to see you become a different person than you were before. And sometimes it's only pressure that makes you that. If it's always your way, you never learn. As a leader of a million complainers, Moses is so discouraged, depressed, and overwhelmed with the problem, he asks God to kill him. In response to Moses, God blesses 70 spiritual men to help lead and administrate the nation. In response to the people's complaint, God blows in millions of birds who surround the camp for miles, so like a day's journey. A man can walk somewhere around 20 to 25, at a regular pace, about 25 miles. There's birds stacked up for 25 miles. And the people are going out gathering them. They gathered, each person of a million people gathered about 500 gallons of birds and spread them out all around their camp. God blows in millions of birds who surround the camp for miles so that each person gathers about 500 dry gallons of birds. The people are then punished for their gluttonous, ungrateful attitude. While the meat is still in their mouths, God strikes them with a plague, killing so many, they name the place Graves of Craving. Grumbling, complaining, a critical spirit, and gossip shouldn't characterize God's people. Rather, they should be continually positive people of consistent faith in God, recognizing and appreciating his blessing and provision. And we see that in 1 Thessalonians 5:18. My whole prayer for us as we head into our Thanksgiving weekend. Now, some of us are going to eat, right? Let's get our turkey on this week. We thank God for the country that we live in. We thank God for his provision. We thank God for everything that he's done. But have you ever taken the opportunity to really thank Jesus for what he's doing in your life right now, whether it's where you want to be or not? Have you taken an opportunity to thank God for the difficulty in your life? Just in my office this week, one of our very own has been fighting cancer, and she's lost all her hair, and she's now in remission. Praise God. We've been praying for her for months, almost ever since I got here. And the funny thing is that, you know what? She is as joyful as the day that I met her before she knew she had cancer. And she's lost health, lost her hair. It's been she's had chemotherapy that's just made her just, want to die because it's you're really poisoning your body to kill the cancer. And the funny thing is that it's never about the physical problems in life. It's always about your heart attitude. Because you can get through anything with the help of the Lord. A tough marriage, a tough job, a tough church, a tough community. You can get through anything with the help of God. But it's up to us to be thankful for even the difficulty. Because difficulty will make you more like Christ. Because even Jesus went through difficulty to save our souls. Isn't that great? That if Jesus would have bailed in the tough times, we would never got saved. But Jesus went to the cross to save us. And are we thankful for that in our hearts? Do you ever say to God, thanks for giving? Thanks for giving to me. I love you, God, for what you've done in my life. I pray that with what you've given me, that I will bless other people and bless you back. Because it's kind of like we talked about with money. It's like you only get to manage it for a little amount of time, and then it just goes to someone else when you're dead. It's like while you've got it in your control, man, bless others. Bless God. Because somebody else is just going to buy a car with your money anyway. So before you bless them, bless God. Let us be thankful people. We should have so much joy in our lives because of what God is doing. Things might not be the way you want, things might not be the way I want, but I can tell you this, things are the way God wants them, even in difficulty. So what we do is we don't necessarily pray to come out of the difficulty, we pray that God, will you make me the person I'm supposed to be through this difficulty, so that when I come out of it, I will shine like the sun, that I will become the man or the woman that you called me to be. Because obviously you've called me into this difficulty for a reason. There's something about me that needs to change, that only this circumstance can help me root out. Let us not be like the Israelites, who, though God was providing every day for them, still found an opportunity to complain.